This is Hospitality Huddles, brought to you by Auden Hospitality, the podcast that challenges hoteliers to think differently about F&B to create outlets that guests will love. Every episode, we will speak to the people who are embracing a different mindset to look for opportunities to stand out from the crowd, sharing tips and takeaways to help you get uncomfortable, change your outlook, and see F&B in a whole new way. So let's not wait any longer and dive straight into today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Hospitality Huddles, and this week I'm joined by Peter Heath from Venue Performance, who very kindly helped with our recent food and beverage report for the first half of 2024 by supplying some of the great data that his platform is producing, working with hotels and venues around the country. So Peter, thank you very much for coming on and sharing some more insight.
Very welcome, Scott. Good to be here.
So we always kick off the show with the question, what does hospitality mean to you? So over to you.
Well, I think there's two answers to that, isn't there? One is my personal, what does hospitality mean to me personally? And that just means, I guess, welcoming people into my home and showing them a good time, and being hospitable and being the perfect host. And then the other one is, what does hospitality mean to the industry? And I think that's where it slightly gets a bit more complicated, because it's kind of, UK hospitality have grabbed that brand, if you like, and that's bars and pubs and restaurants and that sort of thing. So and then hotels sit kind of outside of that, but they shouldn't. And then I also work in the venues space as well, so non-bed meetings and events venues. And we all work in the hospitality industry, but yeah. And then you get into a big question about government. What does hospitality mean to the government? And they've got no clue. But to be fair, we haven't got we can't define ourselves to them anyway. So they're just waiting for us to figure out who we are. So
using it as a good excuse.
Yeah, quite. Sick codes and all that kind of thing, but let's not go there. So that's three answers for you. Apologies.
Perfect. No, you're the first guest to answer three ways, so that's great. But do you know the common theme is very much what you're saying about when it comes down to you personally, is that hospitable host, and I think that's pretty much what every hotel, restaurant, venue around the country is doing when they open the doors every day. So
yeah,
for those people who don't know Venue Performance, do you want to just give a quick 2-3 minute intro into what you do, how you help hotel and venues around the country with their data?
Sure. Well, certainly hotels, pretty much every single hotel will be familiar with STR or CoStar, and what they do for measuring and benchmarking beds or beds. And the easiest way to explain to them what we do is we do exactly the same thing, but we do it for meetings and events. So we do for meetings and events what STR does for beds. And then if you're a property that is not bed related and isn't as familiar with STR, then we do meetings and events benchmarking. So we compare the performance of one property against a collection of their competitors, and we compare the commercial performance. So the overall metric is revenue per square meter. So how much revenue are you able to generate through your meetings and events? And that breaks down into food and beverage, obviously, higher revenue, bed revenue if there is any. So we try to contextualize and put a measurable benchmarking metric on the meetings and events market.
Perfect. Excellent. So in terms of the report that we put together, and obviously we got access to some of your data from there. If we focus on meeting and events, the signs from meeting events is we're still way behind 2019, but in positive terms, it looks like we're starting to get closer to that gap as we move into 2024 versus 2023, certainly. what's the trends looking like at the minute for meeting and events? I guess comparing it before COVID, and I know we're in a very different place, but could you just give people some context into
Mm.
the market?
Well, I think everything's changed. In terms of pace, from a point of view of what businesses or what anybody, it could be a wedding, could be a bar mitzvah, could be a conference, what anybody is booking, the market seems to have changed in terms of its rhythm from pre-COVID. Everybody was cozy, everybody knew the cycles, everybody was into a rhythm, weren't they? Then obviously you had post-COVID, and then there was a huge that whole pent-up demand thing. So everybody was piling in. There was a load of money that was saved up. Businesses were a little bit more reluctant to come back than the leisure traveler. The leisure traveler was just bursting at the seams, right? They just wanted to get out and travel. So,
Yeah.
so that and they had the cash. So that released a whole kind of wave of business. And then the business traveler and the business events industry have been slightly slower to come back, but they are now back in earnest. But it's a cyclical thing. So just like restaurants are impacted by, how much cash is in your pocket on the high street, we're if the business and events industry is impacted by confidence of businesses. So they're obviously buffeted. Certainly in 2024, you had the early elements of the financial markets in terms of interests and interest rates and inflation, food prices, obviously, in case of yourself, and then the election that slowed everything down. Then the budget slowed everything down. So it's been a bit stop start stop start. However, having said all that, so that's the rhythm bit that's shot to pieces. But having said that, the general consensus is that the industry is continuing to be growing and very positively growing as well. We would have all, 23 and 24 to a certain extent was pretty good growth, double-digit growth probably. 25 is less likely to be double-digit growth, but still growing, I think. Because I think businesses have just got to get on with it, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's been delayed for so long, therefore stuff it. Let's just get on with it. So that I think that'll be the phrase, the phrase for 2025 will be, "Oh, just get on with it." So yeah, all good actually, all good. Although that's probably a really grumpy old man's version of events, but the general trend is pretty good.
No, no. The motto at the end was the perfect sign off. I think we should have done that right at the end because let's get on with it. It's probably probably the great way to put it, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
that's what everyone feels around it. Now, I guess in terms of those meeting and events, though, is there any difference between the meeting side of things and events, or is it tracking fairly similar? Or because I think it was when we were on a call together when we were doing the report, and you made a comment about how Christmas isn't what Christmas used to be because of kind of event sizes and spend and things like that. So is there much difference between the two?
Yeah, there's a huge difference actually. I mean, if you think of what we all used to do, spring and autumn used to be conference season, and that's still pretty much the case.
Yeah.
The conference season would be, big gatherings, high spend, and they were the juicy bits of business that, if you're a property, one of those a week or sometimes even one a month would make or break your P&L, depending on what your budget was, obviously. So they have been impacted a bit in terms of size by budget, obviously. And I think there's a general consensus that either those events have been shaved a little bit in terms of size and frequency, and the smaller meetings have taken up the slack on that. So smaller meetings have seen an increase in terms of frequency. So yeah, meetings have increased. Big conferences have probably decreased a little bit. You mentioned Christmas. Christmas has completely changed. I mean, it's night and day what used to happen pre-pandemic, Christmas was a crazy time for the industry.
Mm.
And again, talking to the meetings events industry as opposed to the
Yep.
hospitality industry, it'll still be a big time for the hospitality industry because, bars and restaurants, although I read an article this morning that they're changing as well. The patterns are changing there, but you don't hire a big box and chuck everybody in and get everybody hammered, and you don't do that anymore. People don't want that anymore. People don't, companies don't want it. There's all sorts of legal implications. There's employee well-being. There's everything has changed. Everything has changed for Christmas. So what used to be a bumper payday for hospitality, you'd make a lot of money at Christmas. In the events industry, should I say, rather than hospitality, you make a lot of money at Christmas. That doesn't happen anymore. You don't have the bigger bumper paydays at Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, that was always the time when I always worked in big banqueting hotels, and December was always the ones that you buckled up and looked at January the 1st to calm down and have a
Yeah.
rest again, right? Like lunch and
Yeah.
dinner, and as you were saying, 6-7 days a week, big account bars and things like that would dictate. And I guess that's probably the message. I guess, is it the same when it comes to weddings and things like that, in terms of, are they getting smaller and higher spend? Or, because I guess there's a message here, isn't there, around if meetings are getting smaller, do they then become more labor intensive because you've got more serving less, more events that are smaller? And
Well, I think you've got you've got a range of dynamics. I mean, if you look at the weddings market, that's, if you look at the data that I collect from venues or, classic venues, whether you're a hotel or conference venue or a historic venue or something like that, the data would suggest that weddings are declining. But, that doesn't mean say that fewer people, well, are fewer people getting married? Possibly. But I think people are taking their wedding experiences outside of traditional venues now as well. So, I mean, my family, my last wedding I went to in my family, they hired out a barn, and not a fancy barn either, a very local, rural kind of rustic barn, and they just decked it all out themselves, got a local barbecue company in, and away you go. So I suppose we don't have eyes on that data. So the weddings, the diversity of weddings in terms of what people want has changed, I think, as well as the cost. Obviously, it's very expensive to have a wedding. Um, and then going back to your point about smaller meetings and bigger, smaller, more meetings but smaller people, and the financials about supplying that. There's pressure on the financials because, as you say, you're still hiring out a hall, you're still booking out a kitchen and a chef and a team of, whether they're banging out a 3-course meal with canapes for 160 people or 120 people, you still arguably need roughly the same amount of people, but you're taking 10-15% less in terms of revenues. So yeah, your fixed costs are still quite high. But then in the meetings industry, or sorry, say in the meetings segment, if you like, I think there's an opportunity to be a bit smarter there. You've obviously got tech that's coming in. You've got you can instant book these days. So you can take costs out of more functional, simple events/meetings and put them into your more elaborate, higher spending conferencey type things, or banquets, or award ceremonies or something that, where people are prepared to spend. That's where you can make your margins, and you can, create your revenues, keep the lights on, keep the bills paid using your meetings, but you've got to be a bit smarter about how you finance those, I think, and resource those.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, that I'd never thought about before. But I went to go meet a client who was at Soho Works. They had a membership at Soho Works, and we went there. And he was saying that he'd book a meeting room for us. And he did. He went on the Soho Works app. He looked at the availability. It showed what the availability was and what time it was. He could book it, and he could pick his F&B refreshments in there, and it was done. It was probably took him 3 or 4 minutes. Whereas the hotel structure in the main has probably stayed the same in terms of you make an inquiry through the website, some salesperson calls you, you might have to go and look at the place and contracts and blah, blah, blah. And I guess I've never thought about it before, but actually there is some of that, isn't there, where kind of looking at some of these co-working spaces, and even to an extent where you can go on now and hire podcast studios or filming studios, and you can do it all online. There's a real opportunity there, isn't there, to find some efficiency?
Oh, huge. I think that's where they're going to have to find the efficiency, because they can't, you just can't have a very manual process for a very low cost, a low revenue base. It just doesn't make any sense. And I guess, to want to plug what we do, that's where you can look at the metrics, because you can see if if the market is demand, if you and your competitors, if there's demand there and the pricing is there, so you've got your pricing right, you've got your demand right, then you think, okay, well, there's business out there there's money in business out there that I can take. So how do I get more to hit the bottom line? And that's when you start looking at efficiencies. And efficiencies, by and large, yes, they may be operational efficiencies, but by and large, it'll come through tech, and the customer interaction. And I've seen, even today, I've seen a report. Can't remember who it was, and I just sort of skim read it. 8 out of 10 people don't need or want physical human interaction. I mean, they're not going to say that, clear off, I don't want to speak to you, if somebody approaches them or if somebody phones them up or what have you, but they don't need them. They know what they want. If you can do a banquet for your 100 top customers, then you want that personalized service, and you want to be, the red carpet rolled out on the day. But if you're, as you said, if you're booking a meeting with you and 3 others, you don't need to speak to anybody. You can turn up, you can use your code, your phone to go into unlock the meeting room. Your F&B arrives on the door outside. Somebody gives you a knock, and we're cool with that. That's fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, that's probably better, because you don't want to be hassled by anybody saying, it's like when you're in a restaurant, isn't it? And you're tucking into your meal, you've got a lovely conversation going on, and somebody comes over. Is everything all right with your meal? Yes, it is. If it wasn't, I would tell you. Can you please, with all due respect, can you please clear off? We're in a conversation. If I want I guess that's the shift, isn't it? If I want something, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Please give me the capability of telling you what I want. And when I do want it, it'd be quite nice if you responded quickly, and if it came quite quickly as well. So gear yourself up for that, rather than hovering staff that you don't need.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's back to this whole thing. It's the same with things like room service and other areas that are very similar. It's that down to convenience, isn't it? And that personalization of what that guest wants. Maybe some people do just want to do something on an app, come in, not speak to anyone, and leave again. And that might be their vision of what great experience looks like. Other people might want it much more hands-on and be quite precious. And I think it's that flexibility that's going to be really important, which is what a lot of these co-working spaces offer when they when you sign up with memberships and things like that. And I guess that's quite a nice segue into, do you think some of the things that's affecting, and this might be a bit more of an opinion piece, I get, rather than data, but obviously, like, offices are becoming more modern. They're becoming more self-sufficient in terms of meeting spaces, Zoom pods, and things like this. Co-working spaces now, instead of taking offices, people are signing up to co-working spaces with barista stations and things. Do you think that's having an impact on the market as well, in terms of the competition isn't just the 2 or 3 hotels in your comp set now versus hotels, venues as you benchmark as well, co-working spaces, staying in offices, etc.? Or do you think...
I think that's a good point. And so one of the things we do when a new company joins Venue Performance, invariably they're hotels, right? Because hotels are the vast majority of properties that will give a meetings and events space, especially outside of London. London's got a zillion non-bed related meetings and events venues / spaces, but you go outside of the core city, go outside of the core cities, and certainly London, and there's fewer of those. So hotels still dominate the landscape. And when we onboard a new hotel, we go through the process of advising them on their comp set. So they have an idea, and we can help them with that. And I would say that nearly every single one of them still puts all hotels in their comp set.
Yeah.
And in London, for example, I often think to myself, you have no idea. You've got no idea of the money that you're not watching, that you've got no idea about. So, depending on what sort of strategy you've got, how they're doing against, it's a bigger question, isn't it? How they're doing against the budget. Yeah, okay. So if they need more business and they need to go hunting as opposed to being more efficient when the business comes to them. So if they need to go hunting and think, right, where are all these local businesses booking for their meetings, for their conferences, for their banqueting? Where are the places they're going? Which of my competitors are they going to? They just look, they put the blinkers on, or they have the blinkers on, and they look to hotels. Well, they don't realize that 2 streets down there's a really cool venue that is doing really fancy things. It is, and everybody's piling in there, and they're not even looking at it. Especially if you bring in the issue of the younger audience, the Gen Zs as they're termed these days, which is quite a broad kind of spectrum. But the Gen Zs, the myth is that they don't want to go and don't want to meet in person. Absolute nonsense. They are desperate to meet in person. But they sure as hell don't want to go to a stuffy old hotel with sort of crusty waitress staff asking you what you want every 5 minutes. They just don't want that. They want to go to a cool place where everything's done on the app. And yeah, they don't need to speak to anybody. They're digital, natives, aren't they? So that there's a whole world of revenue and money and experiences that are being deployed in non-hotel based properties, and that's only going to increase. So if you're not looking at those, then I would strongly advise that you do. I was going to say something a bit more opinionated than that, but yeah, take a look at what's around you rather than just what you think is happening.
Yeah, I think that goes back to that doing what we've always done scenario, where I get that a lot with restaurants as well. And I'll ask hoteliers, who's your benchmark for restaurants? And I get hotels, and I don't get any independent restaurants or even restaurant chains sitting in there as well. And it's the same thing. It just seems bonkers, doesn't it? That we're so blinkered in keeping it that way. It's
but where does that come from? Where does that? Who is in charge? I suppose it's because, by and large, the management and therefore the culture they're not Gen Zers, and they're quite they're old, old people like me, and they always do what they've always done, as you just said, and there's a whole new world out there, and they're thinking, and it's quite scary. It's quite to suddenly to unlearn, or not to unlearn everything, but to suddenly embrace a whole range of brand new stuff that you quite frankly don't understand. You don't understand digital, you don't understand tech. You've got to stick your hand up and say, I don't know what I'm doing here. I need some help. You got to be quite a brave person to say that. But if you are brave enough to look for the truth as opposed to your version of the truth, then I think there's some amazing wins out there.
Yeah, I got into a debate actually in Texas when I was out there, because I put an image on the screen about what hasn't changed in the 25 years I've been in the industry, and it was a conference room with carpets and cloth tables, blotter pads, and all the rest of it. And this guy came up to me and he was just like, well, what would you do otherwise? And I said, well, the problem is it's not necessarily it's wrong, but is it right for your hotel? Because I walked into the same conference room last week when I was in a hotel as I did 25 years ago when I started as a banqueting waiter. And I think sometimes it's this thing with hotels where we just try to do something for everyone and actually don't focus on a core client. So if we suddenly take the carpets out and make it a bit more urban, what happens then if someone wants to book a wedding? And we think about the what if rather than but what if we book more meetings who want the stripped back conference room that's totally bland, they can personalize, and actually maybe the weddings do suffer, but you'll make up for that and I think sometimes we're worried about challenging the norm and the what ifs.
Yeah, I think that the trouble that to take that example of what would you differ, that they're kind of saying that's what I do. What's wrong with that? What do you think I should be doing then? And the answer is I don't know. I don't know what you should be doing. I don't know your business. I don't know who your target audience is. I don't know who your regular customers are. I don't know who you want to go after. I don't know who you have been. I don't know what your turn down rate is. I don't know what your cancellation rate is. I don't know your business. All I'm saying is that the world has moved on from that and to what I don't know, because everybody, to your point, every venue, every business is different. So that's a cultural thing. And the fact that they're asking that means that, they haven't figured that out yet. So there's a whole journey to go on about rather than just, plonking them with a solution. Oh, you need to do X. Well, I don't know what you need to do because you haven't seen your business. Another good example was my son, who works in the media industry in London. He traveled to Manchester. I mean, it was crazy. But he's in the digital social media space, so there's a few quid in there in terms of in that sector. And he travelled to Manchester for Christmas. No, for a meal. I think it was a Christmas meal with a client or something. Anyway, there was about 8 of them around the table, 8 or 10 of them around the table, and they had a very casual Christmas meal. And he was sending me pictures because he knows I'm in the events industry. So he was sending me pictures saying, "Dad, this is crazy. They just, they had a menu that they wanted to produce and they wanted to serve them. So they damn well served that menu, and the volume of food was well, on one extreme it was obscene. On the other sort of metric of looking at it, it was just a waste of money, waste of effort, waste of product. And I had a chat with him afterwards, and he said, they could have served us half the amount of food and said to us, here's some food, here's what you've ordered, there's plenty more in the kitchen, let us know if you want any more. Because we don't want to overload everything. So but instead they just plonked it all down. Obviously most of it went back, and then I was thinking, well, where does that go? Where does that fit? They're just not thinking about it. They're just not thinking about how to be different, or how to not even to be different. How, because that sounds as if you're just being different for different sake. How to fit your offer to your customers that are coming. What about if you've booked a table? What about asking them if they would like all you can eat, or whether you'd like them to bring, a sensible amount and ask for more? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, it's just crazy, isn't it? The way people do things, the way they've always done them.
100%. Yeah, it is. It really is. And I think that's one of the things that we try to encourage people to do, is just sit back and question why and challenge and see if it is the right thing to be doing it the same way. Because it's, again, in conferences, it's been running like a machine, hasn't it? And probably and I know we've had things before where the 2008 crisis, and we've had these type of bumps in the road in meetings and events before, but I think this one seems to be pushing the why a lot more than maybe previous ones have. And I think, again, back to your point, I think the generation, or the modern delegate, the modern traveller now is demanding. I don't even think it's a generational thing. I think it's just, as travellers, we're demanding extra things than we did before, and it's time to really challenge what we're doing and see if we're fixing up to that. I spoke to I spoke to a lady on the podcast called Mandy Graziano. She's an event booker in the States, and she works with clients to find them the right venues. And she was saying now that what her clients are valuing more than anything else is that real personalization. So a lot of them are having conferences far fewer than they would have done before. Maybe it's a lot more senior than it was before. But what that means is when they're going away, they're choosing to go to a different state than what they would before. They would have gone bigger and stayed local. They're going away. And then because of that, they want much more personalized experience. So they're demanding the hotel knows what they like and what they want their rooms to be like. And when people are traveling in, to make sure that rooms are ready if they're coming on overnights and things like that. And the whole dynamic's changing. And if you as a hotel aren't able to keep up, it's going to start becoming a lot more difficult, isn't it? Because the people coming to your hotels aren't necessarily the ones in the meeting rooms down the road anymore, where you can go and look at the event boards and things like that and try and see who to target, you know.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that
days.
still goes on, by the way, but
I think it still goes on. Yeah, I think it does still go on. I think that there's less of a reliance on it. But I still think it's in the list of things to do. You know, go and see what's going on with it. I mean, I still talk to companies now and they're still doing it, which I just find slightly kind of logical, but slightly odd that they are putting so much emphasis on it. And to go back to your point, and actually that's the point. You know, where do you put your where do you put your emphasis? Where do you put your creativity? You know, and there's lots of conversation around AI and all that kind of thing. You know, taking jobs and all that sort of thing. And actually the overriding kind of message, I think, is, you know, if robots can do things efficiently and better than you, then let them do it, because they're coming. So you might as well embrace it now and free your team up to do the creative things that robots can never do. So to take your point about, you know, your contact that is looking for more personalized experiences, you're going to get more bang for your buck there. You're going to be able to charge them a lot more money. So they're not saying to you is, we don't want to spend the money. What they're saying to you is, we want to spend more money on the right people with the right experience. So can you service us better? And I don't mind about spending more money, rather than, you know, cookie cutter a conference for, you know, a bunch of people that will get the same. So there's the opportunity there, isn't there, to actually give them that personalized experience, so they're happy. Charge them more money for it, which, I mean, I'm not just saying whack your prices up, but, you know, if they want something a little bit different and a little bit special, then they know that's going to come at a cost. So that's fine. You know, upgrades or whatever it may be, there's incremental costs or additional extras you can add to things. You know, it's the classic, isn't it? It's the classic upsell that I think is McDonald's. You know, do you want fries with that? You know, one question, bang. You know, revenues go up by 20% or something. Oh yeah, go on then.
exactly.
So, but if you don't have the culture, and if you don't have the processes for that information to flow through, you know, if you don't have your front of house or front of desk or reception staff asking for that sort of thing, you know, how many times do you check into a hotel and they say to you, you know, to your point about F&B, how many times do you check into a hotel and saying, will you be eating with us today, sir, or this evening? Oh, I don't know, actually. No, I was probably going to go out and grab a bite. Okay, well, we've got a special. Well, why don't you join us for a cocktail before you go out? And before you know it, you've had some cocktail and some nibbles, and then you think, oh, stuff it, I might as well eat in here anyway. This is pretty cool. Does that happen very much? No,
Not in
hardly.
my recent travels, anyway.
Hardly ever. I mean, that's just like, it's just an open goal right there, isn't it? That's what I think anyway. But nobody's taught how to do those things. It's just weird. I just find it very weird.
For sure. And I think back to your point earlier about how you can put the resource and the creativity where it counts. If people are booking the 2-4 person meeting room online, it allows your sales team to really niche and personalize and give lots of attention to the organizer, doesn't it? And is that what your data's showing as well, that meetings are getting, we know the meetings are getting smaller, but are they becoming higher in spend, and and what have you, or is it
No,
still quite mixed?
not necessarily. I don't think there's more revenues being generated from meetings, but I think that's the point. I think there could be more revenues
Yeah,
generated from meetings. I
sure.
think, if you saw the metric where more meetings and more, I mean, it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because is there more money being spent on meetings? Yes. Is that because of price rises? Because obviously
Mm.
2024 was the first year probably where venues and hotels felt they could put their prices up with confidence,
Mm.
because 22, 23, to a certain extent, they were just glad to have the business. So they were taking the hit on the costs. A lot of those were food costs, obviously, because we know the food prices went up, labor costs, energy, everything was going up, right? So their
Mm.
cost base was a lot higher, but they didn't feel that they could pass that on to the customer. But then it got to the point where they had to, because they couldn't keep it any longer. So then the prices spiked. So 24 saw the prices spike. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not, and this is a case by case basis, I suppose, isn't it? Interesting to see whether particular properties can see that they can charge more. I mean, even this
Mm.
morning, actually thinking about it, I had a call from a client, and she said, "Look, we think we can put pricing up. Can you just show me some metrics on the benchmarking that can justify that?" And we did. We looked at it for 5 minutes, and we said, "Yeah, you're not charging enough. Your competitors are picking up. You're picking up same size events.
Yeah.
Your lead time is longer, but your price is lower. So start the conversation of, can we charge more, and how do we do that? What do we need to do? Do we need to go out to our customers and say, are you happy with the service? How happy would you be if there was a bit more of a cost, or because we're having to pass those costs? But engage your audience, understand what they want, what they need, then start the process of not upselling, but generating more income. And I said to them, you might need to up your game a little bit. You might need
Mm.
to up your product. You might need to do some things to your product, whether it be your F&B offering, or your facilities, or tech, or whatever it may be. But you've got the evidence now to suggest that you can do that, because it's in the data. There it is.
Mm.
Look, you told us who your competitors are. The data suggests this. Therefore, you can start the process of the conversation. Um, so it's like everything, isn't it? This is what you do. You work strategically with businesses, and it's never a case of, oh, do this. You have to start right at the beginning and say, right, who are you? What are you doing? Why are
Yeah.
you doing it? Who are you doing it for? What are your objectives? And then you work through over a period of time. But it is fascinating, because the data does, when the data comes alive like that, it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I was going to ask you actually about like how you're working with venues and hotels. When I call venues, I mean hotels as well, to
Mm.
help give them the edge. And that's a really good example of it, because I think you're right. Like when we work with people on the strategy piece, the data is so crucial to back up people's opinions, people's thoughts, people's vision, because and that's why I really value platforms like Venue Performance, like Hotstats, who we've done the report with as well, because just validating things with that data really does help give confidence, doesn't it? So is there some other exact ways? And this is completely a question to help you plug Venue
Uh,
Performance, because I think it's a great tool for people to have, especially in the current marketplace. Is there some other examples of how you
well,
can help?
well, that's very kind of you to give me the opportunity to plug it, but I'm going to remain unplugged, because the answer
Okay.
is no. Because what I don't want to do, or what the business shouldn't do, my business shouldn't do,
Hmm.
is advise on what to do.
Yeah.
Even though we can, I mean, we're taking tons of data, right? So we don't sit here and look at the data. We look at the macro data, but we don't look at
Yeah.
individual clients' data,
No.
because the client isn't. We don't have an advisory service,
Yeah.
and I think that would be dangerous for us to
Mm.
do that anyway, because it would mean that by default we're going into their comp set, and advising them on how they can perform better against their comp set. So we are immediately compromised in the integrity and the anonymity of our data. So that's why we don't do it. But what we can do is, and we don't charge for it. We don't do it a lot. But when organizations do ask for help, we can tell them how to use the data and how to mine and understand what the data is telling them. But then they need to figure out what they need to do. But I suppose, to answer your question, the example of the company that I was talking to this morning, I did give them one word of caution, because she got very excited about the data supporting what they thought they knew, and lo and behold, they think they can raise prices. And I said, right, don't go in there and say, right, I think we should do X, Y, Z, because you're gonna put your head on the chopping block here. And this is where I think it should go. If you go into meetings saying, okay, well, the data is telling us this, what do we think collectively we should do about it? So then it becomes a shared opinion piece. It becomes a shared topic of conversation. Lots of people will have different ideas, from your newest and dearest intake that's only been there 2 days down to your crusty old general manager who's been there 25 years. Everybody's got an opinion. And at that point, the data suggests that there might be another way that is not opinion based. Then everybody can pile in. And I think that is a really positive cultural environment to be, where you can foster ideas and innovation based on the fact that the data is telling us. Then nobody's wrong, are they? Everybody's just contributing to how we think we could be getting better. It's like when you have a family dispute, right, at home with the kids, to sit around and say, okay, well, what do you think we should be doing then? How would you, I've done it with my kids. How would you like me to do that? Well, I want you to do this. Well, and then you explain to them why that's possibly not going to be the optimum result. I'm not saying everything has to be death by committee, but I'm saying that data does have a habit of having a better idea than you do. So start there and then involve everybody in the decision-making process, and you'll probably come up with a better solution, and you'll have a better, happier workforce. But we don't sell that as a service, to answer your question.
No, but it's definitely the way to use the platform in the right way, though, isn't it? Because it's with any of these things, and when we've used F&B tools before, and when we looked at the data for the report, we looked at it in terms of how does that spark a conversation, how does that challenge what we're doing at the minute, and maybe the outcome is it doesn't challenge it at all, but maybe that conversation that was sparked today around, could we just put our prices up? Because a couple of us have got an inkling. What does the data show? Okay, the data shows potentially. So then you take your thought process with the data to people who can help make a decision, like you say, and then it's a collective decision, isn't it, with arguments to and from. But I guess that's where the power of the platforms can come in. It's not just look at how great we're doing against, because how I've, if I remember my time back in hotels, everything was around where do you sit in the comp set against STR, for example.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not a healthy way to use data. Are we number one? It's not what it's there for, is it?
No. And I had another conversation with a hotel this morning, a hotel group this morning, and they said that they had a different view. They said, well, I don't give a monkeys what the benchmarking. I do the benchmarking because I have to do the benchmarking. They're a hotel, they have to do STR. It's in the investment deck. They've got to do it. So they said that even when you go to the management team and say, look, we're not doing as well on budget, but our comp set isn't doing well either. So, don't shoot me, kind of thing. And the person said, I don't give a stuff. I don't give a stuff what they're doing. You're not hitting budget, try harder. So it's like, okay, well, so data's never going to, it's not the sort of utopian place, is it? But it's just another mechanism to measure, and that can only be a good thing. But then you're into the experience of the people who use the tool and understand data and what have you. And then the culture is huge. I think culture is absolutely huge. Are you going to use that data to beat people up? Are you going to use it to, is it a fear factor? Some people don't even want to look at it. They don't want to start using it because they don't want the truth to come out, because they've been peddling their version of the truth for several years, and they don't want to run the risk of a different truth, i.e. a purer truth coming out. So they often say, "Oh, I don't think we need it." And it's like, well, okay, we'll use it first and then tell me you don't need it. But they don't like that. So there's good stuff in there, but it's a cultural thing as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. And thank you for helping us with some of the data for the report, because I know it's definitely gone down well with certainly people I've talked to who've downloaded the report. So I really appreciate that. And I was really keen to jump on and just give it a bit more context for those people who might have listened to this and actually thought, do you know what, venue performance sounds like something we should get in our hotel. Do you just want to do a few calls to action on you and venue performance before we shoot?
Yeah, well, it's great to always good to talk to industry experts like yourself. So happy to support anything that you're doing. And if you want more information on meetings and events benchmarking, I guess you just go to venueperformance.com, find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the two easiest places to go to. And yeah, I'm sure you'll find a way. If you're that desperate to do it, then you'll find a way of finding me.
Exactly. We'll put the link in the episode notes as well, and then people can get through. And you do some webinars and bits and pieces as well, don't you? So there's lots of free stuff.
We do a monthly webinar actually. We probably get anywhere between 60 and sort of 90, 100 people every month on the webinar. So, and that's great because I present the data. And then we get other. So if Hot Stats are joining us, we're going to give a bit of an end of the year review this Friday actually. So it's always the last Friday of every month. So but we also have a guest speaker on there. So yeah, join those and they're pretty good. Yeah,
for sure. And the email that you send out is always full of knowledge as well. So people should sign up to that. It's
a monthly newsletter.
Yeah, exactly. I get that. Always check it out and see what's happening. But Peter, thank you very much again. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome, Scott. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Hospitality Huddles, brought to you by Auden Hospitality. If you want to see how we can help you think differently for your next F&B project, then learn more by visiting our website at audenhospitality.com. If you want to revisit clips from this or previous episodes, make sure you visit our YouTube channel at Auden Hospitality. Thank you for listening to the show, and see you next time.